So, part one is setup. We're sitting here on a kick wheel. And as you can see, I'm moving my feet side to side, and that's how you power your wheel. If you're right-handed, you'll kick with your right foot. If you're left-handed, you'll kick with your left foot. Easy enough. The other tools for getting started are a wear board, circular sponge, wooden rib, wooden modeling tool, a bucket of water, and about an orange-sized piece of clay. Now you'll notice that my clay is not ready. You can see because it's bumpy and lumpy, so you might need to take your wear board and wedge it. You'll want to wedge any clay that you have before you get started because any air bubbles are going to make it harder to center and throw. Wedge for at least 30 seconds, but a minute is even better. Once you have it wedged and it's ready to go, and I'm just going to do a quick wedge, you'll want to put your wear board off to the side and look for the center of your wheel head. So part two is centering. So the first step is wedging your clay. The second step is looking to find the center of your wheel head. Some wheels have multiple rings near the center. Mine really doesn't, but you can still see where there's a spot that looks like the center. Toss your clay onto it and pat it down. Now I'm right-handed, so I'm going to kick with my right foot. This is going to make it spin in a counterclockwise manner. Kick it slowly, you don't want it to go too fast, and pat your clay until it reaches a dome or kind of mountain shape. It's okay if there's a point in the center. Now, at this point, you're going to kick it so it goes faster, keeping your hands off, and wet them down. You're going to stick your two palms together and lean into your clay. Some people like to stick their elbows on their knees. I need to stick my elbows into my sides. But you want to keep them tucked somewhere, because if you don't, it's hard to stay strong. So as you can see, you can look down and it's spinning nicely. You're closing your fingers around it, and it's going to form a nice even shape. You want to make sure that this edge of your hand is always touching the wheel head. Otherwise you get this kind of a funky ramp, and it makes it harder to throw later. At this point, you might need to wet down your sponge and wipe down your wheel head. Now we're into part three, throwing. The first note of throwing and working on the wheel is if you are kicking the wheel, your hands are off your clay. If you kick and your hands are touching the clay, you can mess it up, you can injure yourself because you're not paying attention. You want to make sure if you're kicking, your hands are off. So, thinking about a clock and where 6 o'clock is, right? If you need to look at the back of the room for the clock, go for it. You're going to put your dominant hand just next to 6 o'clock. So for right-handed folks, you're going to be at 5. For left-handed folks, you're going to be at 7. Again, I'm right-handed, so my hand is going to go at 5 o'clock. This way the clay can run through around my hand. If I put it on this side, I'm more likely to get pulled over. Now step 3 is placing my non-dominant thumb on top of my dominant hand. You always want to make sure your hands are touching in some way. This is my second note of throwing. Now, you're going to slowly push your longest 2 to 3 fingers down into the center while your dominant hand is pressing on the outside. You might have to do it a couple times, and that's okay. You might have to add more water. Again, I'm kicking the wheel nice and fast, but keeping my hands off. Now these fingers are going to slowly press down into the center. You don't want to go all the way down, and this is called dropping the well. When you press those fingers down, it's dropping the well. Now the next step, you've got these same fingers that you used to drop the well, and you're going to pull them straight across, almost like you're trying to push something into your palm. This is called opening the well. And you're making sure your pot has a nice open base, and this is going to determine how wide your pot is. So again, if you need to do it a couple times, that's perfectly fine. This is opening the well. And now we get into the fun part. When it's sufficiently opened, you're going to pull up the walls. So now you're going to turn and lock your thumbs together, and you're going to make kind of a claw formation. Your outside fingers are going to grab the clay, and your inside fingers are going to pull straight up. You should feel the clay slowly running between them and go all the way up. Now my pot isn't very tall right now, so I might need to do this a couple times, and you might have to as well. Repeat this step, pulling up the walls as many times as you need until your walls are sufficiently thin or your pot is sufficiently tall. Sometimes you might get a little bit of a wobble, as you might be able to see with mine, especially with some of these wheels. They're not particularly well balanced, so sometimes your pots might get a little uneven. As long as you make sure that you're starting from the bottom and going nice and slow, you don't have to press very hard. Follow all the way through to the top. And your wobble will get better. Now, if you get a particularly bad spot, this is the first time that you can use this wooden modeling tool. If you slow your wheel down by gently placing it on the kicking area, you can mark out an area with your wooden modeling tool, holding it tight on there, gradually pulling it in, and you'll cut off the top. Now this is something that can be a little bit more advanced, so if you don't want to try it, you don't have to. But now you can compress the rim with your sponge. I recommend letting the lip run between your two fingers, holding your sponge like so. And you can clean up the extra moisture in the bottom. So I'm going to do 1 or 2 more pulls. And I'm also going to show you how to use the wooden rib. So if you've got the rib nice and wet, your hands are wet, you can use the rib to also pull and smooth out the sides. This will give your piece a nice finished look, but some people like the finger lines. The final part is taking it off the wheel and clean up. So when you're ready to take your pot off the wheel, whether or not you want to keep it, you should hold your wooden modeling tool at a 45-degree angle to your pot. You've practiced this with bevel cutting your edges, so again, you're just going to slowly come in at the bottom, and it'll cut off that little corner. Then you're going to get up and go over to the tool crib and grab one of the wire cutting tools. I just happened to have one right by me so I could do this video quicker. But you'll grab one of these tools. I don't have enough for everybody, which is why you'll leave it in the tool crib. You'll splash a little bit of water on your wheel head. Running your wire tool through that water, you'll pull it straight across the bottom of your pot. Don't lift up until you feel it and see it on the other side. If you have to do it a couple times, you can already see that mine's moving off, and then you'll set it on your wear board. When it's time for cleanup, you can use the flat side of your wooden rib tool to clean up that extra clay on your wheel head. Use your circle sponge to clean up what's on here. And then you'll have to make sure that you clean up all your tools, so that, to review, was your wooden rib tool, your wooden modeling tool, your circle sponge, your bucket of water. But then you'll also need to clean up your area, and that includes the wheel head, the splash guard, and the splatter zone. To review, the tools you need when you're setting up are a kick wheel, a wear board, a circle sponge, a wooden rib, a wooden modeling tool, a bucket of water, and an orange-sized piece of clay. And you want to make sure that you wedge it before you get started. Thank you, good luck, and I hope we'll have a good time throwing on the wheel.